you've made all of this wonderful turkey stock. And now you're wondering to yourself, okay, fine, what do I do with it? Well, how about let's make some soup? Soup is an individual thing. It's what you have on hand and what you're in the mood for. So for this batch, I'm starting with a couple of hockey pucks. I scrounged into some of the leftover turkey. And I'm throwing in some fresh veggies, tomato for color, onion, some celery, carrots, and because I have it, the crookneck squash, and of course a clove of garlic. And you can use potatoes or rice or nothing at all. I've decided I'm going to add some noodles to this one. Now let's put some of it together. Of course, when you're making a soup, you want to make everything spoon size. You don't want to do balancing acts. Unless maybe you'll latch onto a big hunk of turkey. So you cut everything up accordingly. Thoroughly dice the garlic. Taste it. Yep. That's garlic. Yum. I may only use half of the onion. We'll see. Everything is subject to change without notice, strictly depending on how the soup evolves and what you want it to do. Well, I think I'll use the other half. Alrighty. The tomato and the squash I will reserve for later because neither one of them takes much cooking time. I have 1 cup of stock and 3 cups of water, which will start warming. Bring that up to a simmer. And a little EVOO. We'll saute the celery, the onions, and the garlic to get their flavors to start coming out. I'll let those get to know one another for a little while. Sauteing them helps to start loosening up the natural flavors in them so that they can release into the soup. As the onions start to go slightly transparent, if you're feeling sadistic, you can throw the carrots in too. Let them get a little of the action. And try to keep it in the pan. And for no particular reason, kick them up a little. Just a sprinkle will slap your mama. And when you see a few edges starting to just go a little bit brown, dump it all in the soup. And with the turkey cut into random bite-sized chunks, start heaving it in there. The quantity you use depends just on how much turkey you want in it. That was, what, 4.5 ounces, about 1/4 pound at this point. I'm adding about another 5 ounces to it, so at this point we have a little over 1/2 pound of turkey in it. You do not want to come out of the bowl with a spoon that doesn't have a chunk of turkey in it. This is not Campbell's, people. Now once it comes up to the boil, ease the heat down. Taste it. See where you are. Good enough for now. Cover it and let it sit here and simmer for about an hour. Meanwhile, I'll cut up the tomato and the squash and we'll put them in later. Then what do you want? What? Wah. Alright. Would some of these help? Hey, Goofy. Well, the same to you, fella. So now what's the deal? You're a mess. I know that we want the turkey and you can't have it. You're probably going to turn up your nose at these, right? Interested? Mm-hmm. Maybe. Is that better? Good stuff. You're welcome. Now every 10 or 15 minutes it's a good idea to stir it a little, take a look. And it gives you an opportunity to take a taste too. What do you want? Again? You're hopeless. I'm doing a video and you're interrupting me. Shame on you. Alright, here. More? No? Anyway, where was I? Oh yes, you're tasting it. And, it needs something. What? It actually needs a little bit of a bite to it. And a little bit of, half a teaspoon of rosemary, a little bit of turmeric. Spice it up just a bit. Not much, maybe 1/8 of a teaspoon. And a sprinkle of cayenne pepper. And we'll see what that does to it. Cover it back up and let it sit and think for another 10 minutes or so. Now, while that's sitting on the back burner talking to itself, I'm trying another one of Hilah's recipes. Up here. This is what netbooks are good for. I've got the recipe sitting right beside me. So if I screw it up, it's my fault. You start with, down here, 3 tablespoons of butter. And while it's melting, you add 1/2 cup of water. and 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne or so. Now let that warm up. Like about now. You dump in 1/2 cup of flour and you stir like crazy. And she says it's going to turn into a dough. And I think she's right. So now you turn the heat off and you let it cool for a couple of minutes. And I think you're supposed to stop messing with it too. And when it's cooled for 2 minutes, you add an egg. And you beat the crap out of it again. Telling yourself that she says it will do the same thing again, instead of turning into a bloody mess. And sure enough, it takes it a while, but it does. And then you add a second egg. And see if you can get 3 out of 3. She does say that you can do this with a hand mixer, but this was how she did it. So unless you have a really good stirring arm, you might want to try it that way. Eventually, it doesn't turn into a ball again, but it gets a lot more dough-like. Maybe because I used extra large eggs and she specified large, but it looks good enough to me. Meanwhile, the soup announced that it's done its hour. It's looking good. Come back to it in a minute. Next thing to do is get this stuff onto a cookie sheet. She used parchment paper. I don't have any parchment paper, so I'm using parchment paper flavored Pam. And we'll see how that goes. We're supposed to drop these in little balls onto the pan. Yay. And then you take them all back off of the cookie sheet again and put them back in the pan because you forgot to add the Parmesan cheese. Reserve a tablespoon or two to sprinkle over the tops of them. And then you stir it all up again. And then you put them back on the cookie sheet again. And you sprinkle just a touch of the leftover Parmesan over the tops of them. If you have some left over, you sprinkle a little more over the tops of them. Still have a little bit left over, you just dump it in the soup. There. Now over yonder, the convection oven has been preheating itself to 400 degrees. She calls for 425, but you automatically subtract 25 when you're doing it in a convection oven. And you cook them at 425, or in this case 400, for 10 minutes. And then you want to change the temperature. And after 10 minutes, you drop the temperature down to 375. In this case, I'll take it down to 350. And you cook them for another 20 to 25 minutes. And meanwhile, you get back to the soup, which is down here somewhere. Now, you can throw in the diced up tomato and the squash. But then you can park it and wait for the little puffy thingies. And it's time to try a bowl. Well, the puffy thingies were definitely done at 20 minutes. And the soup is definitely done. It's time to sit back and enjoy some of it. It smells divine. And you will not get soup like this out of a can. It's time to sit back and enjoy. The little puffy thingies didn't quite puff up like I think they're supposed to. But they're absolutely delightful. I think they probably shouldn't be cooked in convection. But, yummy anyway. Excuse me while I feed my face. I found what I did wrong, and it wasn't the convection oven. I made them too big. The smaller ones did indeed puff up. But the bigger ones, one of which I tried first, didn't. So yeah, back to eating. Bye.